Hello, backpackers. I have two pieces of very interesting news. First, Chris Brogan got called into a business meeting for our actual job, so he can't be here today. The other is I got stood up by the tattoo artist that's supposed to come and join me today. So here's what I propose. I would like to talk with you about careers because I've had several, and I know several of you had too. So stick around and we will talk about that.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Show must go on, right? I was a drama kid. I don't know if any of you were like drama kids in school. I was. So from my standpoint, it's just another Friday. So happy Friday, everyone. First of all, I have a couple of sponsors to thank. If you would like to do a show just like this one, you're going to have to do two things better than me today. You'll have to find yourself a co-host and you'll have to find yourself a guest that will show up. If you would like to make your own show, see brogan.net/StreamYard to get a special extra long free trial. And I love StreamYard. For what it's worth, we've been using it for several years. It is the best solution I've ever tried. And I'm pretty sure I don't even have to tell you about this one anymore, but I'm going to just the same. If you want a .online domain, cbrogan.net/online. The code Chris entered in all caps will get you a .online domain for 99 cents for the whole year. So can you imagine? This is the first time I've been stood up. Well, not by a guest, I guess. Like guests have stood me up. I haven't been stood up in any other context. Hello, Annette. And hi, Chloe from Scotland, still working through all the Scottish goodies that I have on my kitchen counter. And hello to the Brogans. Oh, miss you guys. So I'll give you a little bit of background. First, a little bit about how I know Chris, because I get this question all the time. How do you know Chris Brogan? And, where did you meet and all that kind of stuff? So the answer is sort of funny. In 2006, I had a podcast about pregnancy and parenting. And it was because I was pregnant. And I was like, what if I hate podcasting? What if I don't want to do it anymore? I'm going to be able to stop when I have the baby because the pregnancy will be over. And as it turned out, I liked it. I met people from all over the world. I have friends still from the Baby Time podcast from back in 2006, including Natasha from the Netherlands and Claudia from Portugal, like all over the world. A lot of fun. And Chris Brogan and Christopher Penn started a conference back then called PodCamp. And it was like an unconference or something. So I get this email from Brogan saying, hey, we're doing this cool, unconference thing and all the podcast, bigwigs in this new space, like they're all coming. And do you want to come? And I was like, hell no, because I'd have a newborn baby. And I know you don't think I'm schlepping into downtown Boston for some podcast thing. And so the answer was no. But after that, we kept in touch. I was at a lot of marketing events that he also happened to be speaking at. I used his book in some of my new media marketing classes and had him in to speak to the students. Anyway, so that initial no turned into a series of collaborations, culminating in the Backpack Show 3 years ago. Well, I guess when he dragged me out, I forget how long he'd been doing it before then. So hello, everyone. Life happens. We go with the flow. I'll say, you're here. It'll be great. So a little bit about careers. And I'm not going to get into too much about the guests that didn't show today, but they're a tattoo artist. And I was thinking, how does somebody become a tattoo artist? Like that seems like an interesting journey. And if you've been watching the Backpack Show for a while, you know that what we look for in a guest isn't just what they're doing now, or even their current success, it's the journey. So a lot of people we have on they got a degree in architecture or something. And then they, opened a restaurant and then they moved to Venezuela for a while and sold bikinis on the beach. Like they have a strange and interesting journey. And I think that makes for a strange and interesting career and ultimately success as defined uniquely for you. So my journey, if you want to call it that, started in school. I wanted to be an actress and a singer. I was convinced when I was a kid I was going to be a singer or I was going to be on Sesame Street. Those were like my life objectives. And I wanted to go to space camp as well. I asked my mother every day for a year if I could go to space camp. And she never said to me. And years later, when I asked about it, she said, well, you stopped asking. Like I asked every day for a year and then I stopped asking. So anyway, I had lots of different aspirations, but ultimately went to school when I was 17 for business. I went to Bentley University for business. And I told the people at the college fair that I wanted to study advertising so that I could feature chubby models in advertising. And I don't think I said it that way, but it was something like that. It's like representation in advertising. And they're like, huh, I think that would be business communications. As it turns out, they were incorrect. That would be marketing, right? And they were wrong. So they put me in business communications, where I studied technical writing and PR and took electives in literally whatever I wanted because nobody cared. So I took a course in Alfred Hitchcock, and I took a couple courses in law, like consumer law, elective courses in law, and decided to go to law school at the encouragement of my mentor. But because law school starts in September and I graduated early from undergrad, I had some time to fill. So I got an MBA in international business, because why not? I had a research assistantship and stuff. So long story short, I ended up pretty far afield from making ads for full-figured people, as Stephen Brogan says, which is just one example of why we shouldn't probably let 17-year-olds decide what their whole career is going to be. Actually, 16, right? When you go to college fairs, you're like 16, probably. Okay. So anyway, that's where I kind of landed. Went to law school, got out of there, Suffolk Law, really rewarding experience, by the way, worked my butt off. But when I got out of there, first in my class, I got into clerking for a couple of years. I don't know if you know what law clerks are. It's not a glamorous job, but every courthouse has a pool of law clerks that go sit in on things with judges and help draft decisions, research them, sit in on hearings and stuff like that. And that's what I did. So you write, draft opinions that ultimately the judge will revise and issue orders and stuff. So that's what I did. And I loved it, but it doesn't pay like hardly anything. So then I went into litigation, which is like nonstop crisis management all the time for a pretty big firm, and didn't like love the lifestyle. So moved from there into a small firm to see if maybe that would be more fun. And it wasn't, still billing in like 6-minute increments and stuff. So anyway, during all of this, trying to maintain the creative spark that I need to thrive, because a lot of people find, different ways of keeping the inner light on. So for me, that was like helping work on websites or continuing to do podcasts and do other more creative things while I was practicing law, because too much creativity in law can get you into some trouble. Like, it's great, but like just so far. So eventually I left law to get into teaching, but teaching as an adjunct doesn't have benefits, doesn't have all that kind of, good stuff. So I had a daytime job as managing editor of a college magazine while I was teaching business law and marketing law at night. Did that for a while, then started teaching full-time. And eventually after that got into training and content with marketing profs, because I wanted to go to events to become, to be like to stay current in the field in which I was teaching. And so I started freelancing for outlets like Marketing Profs and other marketing websites. So I could go to events, get a press pass, and then the buddy from freelancing paid my travel, all of which then got me into content, which is where I am now. So it's been this wild, crazy journey. I hope that wasn't too boring for you. But along the way, I tried out podcasting. I did a lot of other fun, rewarding, creative things, and built this amazing network completely by accident of some of the best and most talented marketers in the world. And I'm so thrilled every day that I get to do that kind of work. So currently, Chris Brogan, who's not here, and I both work at an enterprise software company called AppFire. And AppFire makes apps for different ecosystems. Like, you've probably heard of Atlassian, Microsoft, you have Azure, GitHub. Like there's a bunch of different ecosystems in which we operate. But he and I share this passion for bringing creativity to marketing. So tell me about your careers and how you landed where you landed, because I know Chris started at the phone company, if I'm not mistaken. Well, his first job was at a library. He's talked about that before. Your parents are here, Chris, so they'll give me the scoop. But you can ask me anything. So because Chris isn't here, you can ask me anything about him. You can ask me anything about careers, and I'll tell you how everything's kind of folded in. But in my experience, everything you do, however strange and unrelated to the last thing, feeds into the next step. the next good idea, the next natural or unnatural progression in your career. And then eventually it makes sense. Like somehow along the way, you've picked up all the arrows for your quiver that you need to do the thing that you were always meant to do. It's so crazy how that works. I couldn't tell you how or why, but I'm not a lawyer, but my legal experience helps me every day. I'm not exactly an actress like I wanted to be, but my ability to talk in front of groups of people that I don't know benefits me every single day. My marketing expertise, honed over years of doing both my own marketing in internships and things in school and jobs after, and then eventually rolling into law where I did like on the side websites and videos and stuff like that, helped me out. And then working for marketing profs for 8 years helped me develop a lot of knowledge around marketing strategy, newest thinking on B2B marketing, that kind of thing. And then all along the way, podcasting for them. So I learned audio production and show production and promotion and all kinds of things. So it is very strange. Annette says, strange and interesting journeys. So interesting how it can make sense later. At the very least, you show up where you're meant to be with a case full of the necessary skills and equipment. Chloe says, you have such a rich and interesting story. You know what? Everybody here does. So some of you have gotten way in depth in your stories. Some I haven't, but I know, you didn't just get a degree in accounting and then do accounting for your entire career. Not that there's anything wrong with accounting. Accounting is great. Thank God for accountants because I don't like it. I had to take in business school, accounting 101 and 102. I had to take finance 101 and 102. I had to take macroeconomics, microeconomics, operations management. I'm trying to think what else I had to take and hated. Calculus, statistics, all that stuff, whatever. Do I use that stuff every day? No, I do not. But I'm very glad at least that I had to push myself and find a way through it because that's really become another life skill. I was actually just talking to someone yesterday about how when I was a kid, my mother left me at Friendly's, which is a regional ice cream and food restaurant chain. 2 times she forgot me. It was because she had this routine. My mother would go to Friendly's, like, I don't know if it was every day, but it was pretty frequent. And she would order the same thing and she would read a chapter in her book and she'd have a couple of cigarettes. So this tells you like how long ago this was because you could smoke like in a Friendly's. And that was her routine. So when she was done with her cigarettes, she would leave. That was also her routine. So I went with her twice, and she forgot me because at that moment she finished her cigarettes, I was in the bathroom or something, like I wasn't at the table. And so she left and left me at Friendly's. And I was thinking at the time, okay, she's not there at the table. So I'd go to check outside and see if her car was there. Car is gone. Go back in, check the payphone for a coin in the return slot, just in case, because you never know. No coin. And I was just at the point of thinking, I better ask the waitress to give me a dime to call home when my mother turned back. So later on, when I would ask her about this, she would say, well, I always came back. Oh, hey, there you are.
Yeah,
I was just at the point where I was going to take questions about you and your personal life.
Oh, that's pretty funny and weird. Hey, I was going to ask questions about tattoos. How much does it hurt to get those things? That looks like a lot of work.
It hurts. I don't know. A lot. Some days a lot, some days not as much. It's very interesting, actually. Depending for women, at least, like not to get too personal, but where you are in your cycle, sometimes it feels like you're getting burned with like a wood burning tool. And sometimes it's like it's not pleasant, but it's not terrible. So that's my advice on that. Time your tattoos. Hi, Tamsin. One of my favorite quotes, looking back, the past is a straight line. Oh my gosh. And if you don't follow Tamsin Webster, you need to. The red thread and her communication architecture advice, the best advice I've ever received. And I use it every day in my work. Every day. And your dad says both the Brogan boys' first full-time job was with a phone company based in Boston. Chris's younger brother is still with a phone company that deals with landlines. I don't have a landline anymore. Shh. Chris had ideas about business, but stodgy phone companies were not as flexible. Chris had his sights set higher.
I love it. Trouble. That's true. I mean, that's just. Oh my gosh. I'd be like, how come we can't do this, or why hasn't anyone done that? And I just got sent to the woodshed over and over.
Try doing it in law. When I was like, why can't we have a podcast where we talk about basic things that we don't want, like basic level clients anyway. You want like more sophisticated stuff. Give away the basics. And they're like, no, that's crazy. You're insane. You sound insane.
I only see I must have to re-log into LinkedIn or something. I'm only seeing the YouTube comments for some reason on this one. So,
oh, that's funny.
That's really funny.
No, but they're both here. But yeah, so careers end up, I gave my whole career journey, which you already know probably. So, so you started in the library.
And, I did. I was a page at the library, puts away books. But you know what I did? It's funny. I was just having a quick talk with Rob Hatch, my co-founder over there at the Owner Media Group, and we were talking about the fact that he had to present to a whole room full of marketers, and he wanted to say, "Hi, everybody. You're why everything gets ruined." And he chickened out.
Oh, I love it though. It's so true.
Hang on. The day job that was getting in the way earlier is kind of poking me in the shoulder. But yeah, what I was going to say was he did a strength finders test with this group of people. And what was weird was that the marketers, what they least had any interest or strength towards was influence. And he thought that was hilarious because the marketers,
funny.
Were least obliged with influence. And one of the things that I was thinking, and it kind of made me laugh, was just the whole sense that even as a book page, so my whole job is just put away the books, do whatever the librarians ask you to do. It was like schlub labor. But what I did while I was there was talk to people about books as much as I could. Oh, I totally love this sort of thing. Or, hey, did you want to learn a little bit about this? Do you want some sense of where you could explore if you liked that, if you want to go over to there. And I've never stopped. I've never, ever considered my job the boundaries of the job description. I use it as a platform.
So you were like an AI. You were like ChatGPT. What book should I read if I like Willow?
Yeah, that, because I always thought we don't come to people for help. I mean, we often come to help for people for the basics. What we also come to people for help with is stuff that's, pre-Google even, but now in the Google world or the ChatGPT world, we come for the stuff that a search engine's not going to surface. We come for things like, oh, well, if you're going to make biscuits, this is counterintuitive, but you shouldn't melt the butter. You should keep the butter cold. There's something about the cold butter with the flour that makes the biscuit better. That's something you get from a cook. Even though you could maybe read it somewhere, you're going to hear the inflection and the energy a different way.
See, do you have a career in mind when you started out, or were you like, I just don't want to do this. I want to change what I'm doing. Or did you want to like revolutionize the telephone industry? Like, what's your plan? Did you have a plan?
No, and Tamsin's so right. When you look back, it's a straight line, right? Like, I mean, that's the whole part of biographies and that sort of thing. Hey,
Broken GPT.
The whole concept that okay. So the thing I was working forward from, like when looking back, it's really easy to see some threads. But the thing I was working forward from was just always, why hasn't anyone? Or couldn't this be easier? Or wouldn't this be cool? And I don't know. No one told me my job was supposed to be just doing the job. So in every job I ever had, I tried to fix or do differently or whatever. So it's probably very tiresome to people.
So you're like a professional shit disturber.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of doing things with
sense.
kids.
Now, when did you discover podcasting and decide to do PodCamp, which I said no to?
Me? I started podcasting in 2005. I thought it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life. I had a very interesting, very corporate perspective of it because the first podcast I met were things like big enterprise companies. Sun Microsystems had a huge podcasting group. Oracle had a pretty good podcasting group. I was really connected to all these other pieces. And it was just fascinating to me, the opportunities. And then, so I made a show. And then what happened was I ran into Christopher S. Penn. We were at a bar camp event. And it was at the old headquarters of Digital Equipment Corporation, which is out in Webster, Massachusetts. What was it? I might be lying. Maynard.
You're asking me. I don't know. Sorry, Maynard. I was probably 12. So
my dad's on the call. My dad knows. And so where I ran into Penn, which, by the way, my current CEO also used to hang out that building when he was a little kid. So it's crazy connection. Penn and I were like kind of appreciating some of the details of bar camp, but also they were like super not inclusive at this particular event. There was a guy there like, I know more about the Java kernel than anyone else in this room. And I was like, you probably do, but that's not a helpful thing to say. And Penn caught me trying to record audio right off of a speaker. So I was like holding my device up to the speaker and he's like, that's going to sound like shit. You really shouldn't do that. And I was like, oh, I like this guy. Yes. And that was it. So we launched an event. Our mutual friend, CC Chapman, was dealing with some stuff. And I didn't. By the way, I met Tamsin at PodCamp.
She says, forever, truly one of the most important events I ever attended based on the connections I made that weekend. Well, I was home with my newborn. So.
Yeah, and you said no to me. You didn't even say
a flat no. Yeah, I was so ungracious. Like, no way. Not going to the freaking wherever it was in Boston. I forget. Oh, Tamsin also says one of my favorite soapboxes because LLM surfaces the most likely string of words. Right. Which is why A, it's terrible at coming up with new things, and B, why there's an amazing opportunity for people who can create unusual or unexpected connections. Oh my God, you're like the poster child for unusual or unexpected connections.
And she's so utterly right. But the timing on this is fascinating because I'm just thinking if I can or can't. Okay, we're looking at things like
don't get in trouble.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. We're looking at things like Copilot for coding. So Microsoft owns GitHub and all this other stuff, and Copilot is their LLM type stuff working on code. And what it definitely does is exactly what Tamsin said. It closes loops, it fixes things, it does the really grunty, horrible part of coding so that you can think of the bigger things. So Tamsin's point is spot on. You don't go to it and say, hey, come up with a cooler way to make a, dating app. You say, in my dating app, I can't have more than 4 tabs open. Everything crashes. What do I do better? And it'll walk itself through the code and kind of fix some things. So it's fascinating because like we're getting to that point where we're starting to understand and surface what it's good at, what it's not in such a short amount of time. So as you're watching some of the gurus of AI out there, definitely accept that, there's definitely a lot of learning still going on.
I want the level of AI like the next generation computer had to make, fun games for you. Like, do you remember the episode that was all about Data, the android, not like Data, the stuff, and he wanted to pretend to be Sherlock Holmes. And he was getting frustrated because the computer would just come up with, storylines and like cherry pick from existing Sherlock Holmes stories and put something together. So he like recognized them all right away. And so I can't remember. It was probably Geordie, but somebody said, "Computer, come up with a villain who can defeat Data," and that's how he phrased it. Not Sherlock Holmes, Data. So it ends up taking this wild turn. But that's what I want. I want like something that will go that level and be like, okay, now we're talking. Let's try something completely different.
I would settle for the thing I've always wanted, which is Jarvis. I want Jarvis. I just want like,
you just want someone to schedule your appointments for you.
Double check the stuff coming up in the next week. Tell me if there's any way I can optimize it. Is there anything I need to do ahead of time that I forgot to do? Like there's just a lot of that, I think.
Tamsin says, I love using it to prove me wrong. Yes, yes, yes. I'll tell it a concept I believe or want to argue for, then ask me to prove it wrong because it surfaces the most likely stuff. It's really good at pointing out where people would most likely poke holes or object. Super useful.
I like that.
I actually learned that data lesson from Tamsin's significant other, Tom, when I interviewed Tom Webster on the Marketing Profs podcast years ago. He was saying that where a lot of marketing research or research in general goes wrong is you're just kind of looking to validate something.
Yes.
But if you approach it the other way and try to prove yourself wrong, you're much more likely to notice, the information that comes back. And if you don't prove yourself wrong, great, you were right. But otherwise, you're actually paying attention to the things that contradict your original thesis. Right. I know you're getting like blown out over there.
I know. I'm.
Are you like? Is there a SWAT team outside?
I'm seriously contemplating putting an actual piece of cloth covering over this window for the first time.
That'll be the day.
I'm not feeling it. It's been many years, and I've still let all the sun in.
Or you could just like move to the throne.
Yeah. So.
Here we go. Now we're back in the old days.
Yeah, walking around show. I want to just say something more about the data thing you were just saying with Tom, was that that's something that's really on my mind a lot of time, is that, well, I mean, you and I have talked about it a couple different ways too, which is that people who are afraid to take a shot are afraid of failing, but failing is data. And when you learn something, you can then go, oh, all right, well, I got to make some different choices based on what just happened there. Mm-hmm. I am floored that so few people understand and recognize the value of more data, even if a lot of it's, from failures. It's mind blowing to me.
Well, bringing that back to careers, think about that, right? Like, I went to school to become a lawyer, then practiced as a lawyer and was like, you know what? This lifestyle kind of sucks. So don't want to do that. Like the work, didn't like the business model, which, admittedly, the business model has changed for some firms. But anyhow, same idea. So I imagine you along the way got a lot of data about what you did and didn't want to do, or where you could, and couldn't kind of make a life around the work you were doing.
Darned true.
Like being an entrepreneur. No, what topics do you miss earlier? I was waiting for someone up until the second I went live. So more data equals easier pattern recognition. Yes, yeah. Absolutely true. So I've got all kinds of data about things I don't want to do, but along the way, I also developed a pretty good data set about what I'm good at. And some of it would sound so boring, but like figuring out, making sense of a situation, seeing what other people, while they're worried about things and they're bringing their own emotional kind of needs or biases to it, I'm just like, but A plus B equals C, and I can see it so clearly. Sometimes I can see past that stuff, and it makes for a much easier, easier marching orders, I guess. Like, you can leave a meeting with something to do if you can only just cut through the angst and whatever else is going on that's got people sidetracked. So that's been a useful skill.
I also think one of the benefits, it's a little hard to get to this particular pomegranate, but I'll get there. A lot of times, if you work on some of the easier stuff or the smaller stuff, or you get some like kind of rote execution experience going, then you can work on bigger things. I love movies. You love movies. One of the things that I love in movies is when you see an actor act as if they absolutely are that character. They've been doing that thing for some massive amount of time. They have great experience doing it. Tom Cruise does it all the time. Anytime you see Tom Cruise touch anything in a movie, it clearly seems like he's owned it his whole life, whether or not it just took him a few months to learn it. Sigourney Weaver doing the lifting thing in Aliens, and showing that she knew her way around it to those guys. If you remember that scene, she's on the ship and all the Marines are kind of giving her crap. And she's like, well, I know how to do this. And they were like, oh, and whatever. Like, but that level of, I have some capability so I can do something larger. I mean, that obviously ends up being a major plot point to the movie Aliens, but she wouldn't have got there if she didn't do the kind of rote work. I think it's weird that we don't give that a lot of credit.
My first marketing job, I was with a startup in Cambridge doing like mail merge level marketing, mail merges and calling. I actually sat on the phones with the tech support guys for a solid couple weeks, and they were all guys, as it happens at the time, to figure out where things were going wrong with the software that we sold, like what frustrations people had, where we could make it easier. And I brought all that back to the marketing department. And I did like direct mail drops. This is literally where we were. And I would get to the point where I would get like a cylinder from a car dealership or something with a key in it and bring it to work and be like, oh, what's our key? Like, this is awesome. That kind of stuff. Right. So long ago. But because I've done that, and along the way, like when I produced the Marketing Profs podcast, I didn't just host it. I didn't show up for the fun part. Like, I did everything from identifying guests or going through pitches, researching things, producing, running, and planning the show, and then editing it afterwards. I mean, the whole shebang. So having done that gives me a whole new appreciation for the work it takes. So when someone's like, can we just spin up a podcast? I'm like, well, sure. If somebody's going to do these like 70 things that go along with it, we can spin up a podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that gives you the chops. So having done the work gives you the chops to make decisions about what you can realistically do.
You're spot on. It's funny because I'm working on a new podcast.
He's going to do those 70 things. It's probably not you.
Yeah. Did you do ad reads?
Yes, I did.
Good.
I even did when we didn't have to anymore. I did the Down Online one.
Oh yeah, I totally need to tidy up some of that stuff.
I could go try registering in Online to see if the code still works. I think it does.
Don't do it. Watch.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Come on.
Who are you giving? I mean, I showed up. There's a third guest, so
Tamsin, of course.
Yep, she was our
amazing.
Third guest. And that's having us wrap up the show already, so we have to answer the question for Annette. She says, before we finish today's show at this point, today, what would you put in your backpack? Today. What are you going to put in your backpack?
Resilience. I almost said self-reliance, but I think that can be taken to an extreme to where you're not, where you're not availing of your team and stuff. And I don't think that's a good thing. But resilience for sure, because you're going to get knocked down again and again and again and again. But like Rocky says, it's not about how many times you can get hit. It's about how many times you can get back up and keep going.
I really honestly misheard you and thought you said Brazilians. I was like,
yeah, Brazilians.
They're very nice people, I guess. As
resilience. I will never put people in my backpack. I feel like
I know.
It's wrong.
Nikki kind of, knocked you out of that one. I'm going to say pasta, butter and noodles with a little parma on top. That's what I'm putting in the backpack.
A little early in the day, but
I had a sidebar conversation with Chloe where I said I sent her a dumb meme about this guy who ate like 14 cinnamon rolls and died. Like he ate himself to death on cinnamon rolls, and I thought, wow,
that's horrific.
One way to go. And then I said,
I hope they were at least Cinnabon.
Given the topic, no, it was like the 1400s or something. Given the topic, though, what would you be interested in eating yourself to death on? Like you're going to eat till you die. What would you do? And I thought, pasta, butter and parm.
No, probably like rice cakes because it would take a really long time.
Oh my gosh, that'd be.
I'd have so much time.
Yeah, but you'd have so much awful time. Think about how awful your throat would feel. Oh.
Yeah, but I could like do a will with one hand and eat some rice cakes with the other.
So that's my what I'm putting in the backpack. I don't know if Tamsin's still here, but if you are, Tamsin, what would you add to the backpack? Either something physical or metaphorical.
Tamsin is so smart. She's so smart. It's crazy talking to Tamsin, how smart she is. And I've learned so much from her. If you've never been to one of her, she has Red Thread weekends. Go to an event with her. I promise it'll be worth it. Tamsin Webster.
Oh my gosh. I
want Kerry's answer. You want the Brazilians or you want resilience? There's a difference. Oh, Tamsin's trying to figure out what goes in her backpack still. Well, let's have to have Tamsin on the show again.
I'll tell a Tamsin story. Yeah, we'll have her as a guest again. I'll tell a Tamsin story that I stole from her at her pre-Red Thread event that she held one time, which was it was a bunch of VCs and they were having a real trouble kind of closing their deal. I'm going to tell the story awful. She'll hate it so much she'll have to do it again. And they would get to the slide and they'd show the About Us slide. That was one of they found out that was one of the reasons people weren't going with them as an investment. And it was because as they were sort of showing, hey, look at all the wisdom and knowledge and intelligence on this team. What the young people who are in these startups were seeing is, look at all these old people. They're not going to understand us or whatever. It's not going to work out. And so Tamsin was saying, sometimes you just don't know what the thing you're showing, is conveying unless you actually help educate the person as to what you want them to take from the information. And that one little detail in that one presentation, like, changed so much of how I present. And it was just like, that's just one micro example of what you'd get if you went to a Red Thread weekend.
Now we'll get Tamsin back on the show for sure, because she's going to want to correct all that stuff.
She's going to fix every mistake. All right. Well,
if Tamsin ever opens up for funding or something, buy the hell out of that.
Profit.
Okay, Tamsin. Profit for. Okay, I'd put a copy of Profit First. Honestly, the more I could have managed money better early, the easier a lot of other things would have been. Oh boy, I'm terrible at that too.
That's interesting. Only because I just had a conversation like this about the articulate the belief behind the story, right? Yeah. See, she even did the phrasing. I just wrote this note down. It was in a conversation about intended revenue goals, It's basically a lot of people get this formula wrong, but it's revenue minus profitability equals expense. That's kind of probably from Profit First. I've never read the book yet, but when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. Because usually you're like, well, revenue minus expenses equals whatever's left over is the profit. But if you do revenue minus profitability, you then can manage your expenses from that. I was like, oh my gosh.
Here's what we need. We need Tamsin to become Tamsin Inc. and go public, and I will buy the hell out of that stock.
There's some stocks there, yeah. All right, we got to get out of here, I think. I feel like we've hit all our things.
Yes, well, you're going to have to come back, Tamsin. We've established that. And if you show up, you'll already be my new favorite guest.
Aristotelian syllogisms.
See, this is the thing. When you talk to Tamsin, I would have to Google that before I talk to her again.
Yeah, well, listen, let me tell you what that's about. I'll give you the explanation. So first
Pornhub analogy. It's amazing to me how you can work Pornhub into like anything.
Everything. I mean,
but now I get it now.
You have to be able to end a